She was invisible to him for 3 years. 3 years of perfect coffee orders, seamless schedules, and late nights spent ensuring his empire ran like clockwork. 3 years of watching him seduce the city with his power while he barely remembered her name. But the moment another man sent her flowers, white roses tied with silk ribbon, delivered to her desk at exactly 9:43 on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. The CEO, who said she was just an employee, suddenly couldn't breathe when he saw another man's attention blooming in her hands. And in that moment, watching his steel-grey eyes darken with something raw and uncontrolled, Alicia Munro realized the most dangerous truth. He'd been lying to both of them all along. The morning Manhattan sun cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harrington Industries, casting geometric shadows across Alicia Munro's desk. She'd arrived at 6:30, as always, to ensure everything was perfect before William Harrington III walked through those mahogany doors at precisely 7:45. 3 years, 1,095 days of anticipating his needs, decoding his moods, and making herself invisible except when absolutely necessary. Alicia adjusted the orchid on his desk, white, always white, replaced every Monday without fail, and reviewed his schedule on the tablet. Back-to-back meetings until 6, followed by dinner with the Singapore partners at Le Bernardin. She'd already confirmed the reservation, ensured his preferred table by the window, and notified his driver of the 7:15 departure time. "Good morning, Miss Munro." His voice was velvet over steel, the kind that commanded boardrooms and made competitors nervous. Alicia looked up as Will strode through the executive suite. 6 feet 2 inches of tailored perfection in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington. Your coffee is ready, and the Johnson contract is on your desk for final review." He didn't look at her. He never really looked at her. "The board meeting is at 9, she continued, standing to follow him into his office. "Mrs. Peterson called about the charity gala next month. She needs your RSVP by Friday. Handle it." He settled into his leather chair, eyes already scanning the contract. "Whatever she wants, just make it work." Alicia had heard those words so many times they'd become white noise. Handle it. Make it work. Take care of it. Never thank you. Never acknowledgement of the countless hours she spent ensuring his life ran smoothly while hers remained on pause. She was 28 years old, a summa cum laude graduate from Columbia Business School, and she'd become exceptionally good at being invisible. The morning proceeded with mechanical precision. By 8:55, Alicia had briefed Will on every agenda item, prepared his notes, and ensured the conference room was ready. She took her usual seat in the corner, present but unobtrusive, ready to retrieve documents or clarify details as needed. The board members filed in, 12 powerful men and 3 women who shaped the financial landscape of New York. Will commanded the room effortlessly, his presence magnetic and absolute. "Before we begin," Harrison Webb, the CFO, leaned back in his chair with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've been hearing interesting rumors, Will. Something about you and your lovely assistant here." The room went still. Alicia's fingers froze over her tablet. Will's expression didn't change. "I'm not sure what rumors you're referring to, Harrison." "Oh, come on." Webb's smile widened. "You two are practically joined at the hip. Late nights, business trips, that photo from the Tokyo conference. Miss Munro is my executive assistant." Will's voice dropped several degrees. "She's exceptionally competent at her job. Beyond that, she's just an employee, nothing more." The words landed like ice water. Just an employee. Alicia kept her face neutral, kept her breathing steady, kept doing what she'd perfected over 3 years, disappearing. But something inside her shifted, cracked like the first fracture in glass before it shatters completely. "Of course," Webb chuckled. "Just an employee. My mistake." The meeting continued for 2 more hours. Alicia took notes, retrieved financial projections, coordinated with department heads via silent messages. She performed her role flawlessly while replaying those 3 words on an endless loop. Just an employee. When the board finally dispersed, she returned to her desk and stared at the city sprawling below. 47 floors of steel and ambition between her and the ground. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus Chen, the VP of Business Development at Sterling Corp, Harrington's biggest competitor. They'd met at a conference 6 months ago, and he'd been persistently, charmingly interested ever since. "Dinner tomorrow? I promise to make you laugh at least 12 times. Alicia smiled despite herself. Marcus was handsome, successful, and most importantly, he saw her, actually saw her. She typed back, "Make it 15 times and you have a deal." "What are you smiling about?" she jumped. Will stood beside her desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that had no business being as distracting as they were. "Nothing, Mr. Harrington, just confirming your dinner reservation." His grey eyes, the colour of storms over the Atlantic, studied her for a moment longer than necessary. "You seem different today." "I'm exactly the same as always." He didn't sound convinced. "Don't forget, I need the Mackenzie portfolio by end of day." "Already on your desk." Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe admiration, before the mask returned. "Of course it is." He walked back into his office, and Alicia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That evening, alone in her modest Brooklyn apartment, she made a decision. She opened her laptop and updated her resume for the first time in 3 years. She had offers, she knew. Recruiters called monthly with opportunities. She'd always declined, telling herself she was learning invaluable skills, positioning herself for future success. The truth was more complicated. The truth involved stormy grey eyes and a voice that could make her pulse quicken with a single word. The truth was that somewhere in 3 years of proximity, she'd developed feelings for a man who saw her as furniture, just an employee. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus had sent a photo of himself at a restaurant, making an exaggerated sad face. "Already missing you, and we haven't even had our first date yet," Alicia laughed and responded with a playful emoji. Marcus was exactly what she needed, someone who wanted her, who made her feel seen, who didn't require her to be invisible. She didn't notice the notification that appeared at exactly 11:32. Will Harrington had accessed the shared drive where her updated resume was auto-saved. She didn't know that in his penthouse 12 blocks away, he stared at that document for 17 minutes, whiskey untouched in his hand, something dark and possessive coiling in his chest. She didn't know that he'd been lying too. The next morning, Alicia arrived at her usual time to find the office already alive with activity. A delivery man was navigating through the glass doors with an enormous arrangement, 3 dozen white roses, pristine and perfect, in a crystal vase that caught the morning light. "Delivery for Miss Alicia Monroe." Every head in the office turned. Alicia felt her cheeks warm as she signed for the flowers, reading the card with shaking hands. "For the woman who makes ordinary days extraordinary. Looking forward to tomorrow." "Marcus." She smiled, touched by the gesture, and carefully placed the arrangement on her desk. They were beautiful, fragrant, and impossible to ignore. The elevator chimed. Will stepped out, and his eyes went immediately to the roses. He froze mid-stride, his entire body going rigid. "What?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Are those?" "Flowers, Mr. Harrington. I can see they're flowers." He approached her desk slowly, like a predator circling prey. "From whom?" "A friend. A friend." He repeated the words as if testing their validity. What kind of friend sends 3 dozen roses to someone's workplace? Alicia lifted her chin, that crack inside her widening. The kind who appreciates me. Now, if you'll excuse me, your schedule. Cancel my 9 o'clock, she blinked. What? You heard me. Cancel it. We need to talk. About what? His eyes locked on hers, and for the first time in 3 years, she saw something raw and unguarded in their depths, something that looked almost like panic. About the fact that you're not just an employee, he said quietly, and about what a damn fool I've been. The conference room felt smaller than usual, or perhaps it was the weight of Will's presence that made the walls seem closer. He'd dismissed his 9 o'clock with a terse phone call, something Alicia had never witnessed in 3 years. William Harrington III did not cancel meetings. He did not deviate from schedules. He certainly did not lock himself in a room with his assistant to discuss flowers. But here they were. He stood at the window, hands in his pockets, the Manhattan skyline stretching behind him like a kingdom he'd conquered through sheer force of will. The morning light caught the silver at his temples. He was 38, though the weight of running a multi-billion-dollar empire made him seem simultaneously older and ageless. How long? His voice was controlled, but she heard the edge beneath it. Excuse me? How long have you been seeing him? Alicia's spine straightened. I don't believe my personal life is your concern, Mr. Harrington. He turned then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. This wasn't the cool, detached CEO she'd served for 3 years. This was something primal, barely leashed. Marcus Chen, he said the name like a curse. Sterling's golden boy, the man who's been trying to poach our clients for the last 2 years. I'm not dating him because of business. Then why? He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, more complex. Why him? Because he asked. The words came out sharper than intended. Because he notices me, because when he looks at me, I'm not invisible. Invisible? Will's jaw tightened. You think you're invisible? I know I am. Alicia stood, needing the distance, needing air. Yesterday you told a room full of people I'm just an employee. 3 years, Mr. Harrington. 3 years of making your life perfect, of knowing how you take your coffee and which tie you'll choose based on your mood, of rearranging my entire existence around yours. And I'm just an employee. That's not... He stopped, ran a hand through his dark hair. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Harrison was fishing, Will said finally. Looking for vulnerabilities. You know how the board is, any perceived weakness, any hint of impropriety, and they circle like sharks. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Alicia laughed, but there was no humor in it. By reducing me to furniture? By keeping them away from you? His voice rose, control slipping. Do you have any idea what those men would do with the truth? The rumors they'd spread, the way they'd tear you apart just to get to me? The truth about what? He stared at her, chest rising and falling, something desperate in his eyes. That you're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thought before I sleep. That I schedule late nights just to have more time with you. That I've turned down 3 qualified candidates for regional manager positions because promoting you would mean losing you from my side. That every woman I've dated in the last 3 years has been a pale substitute because none of them are you. The world tilted. Alicia gripped the edge of the conference table, trying to process words that couldn't possibly be real. That's not... You never said anything? Showed anything? Will's laugh was bitter. I'm exceptionally good at compartmentalizing, Alicia. I've built an empire on keeping emotions out of business, but this... He gestured between them. This was never just business. Then why? Because you deserve better than me. The admission came out raw. You're 28, brilliant, with your whole future ahead of you. I'm a divorced workaholic with trust issues and a family legacy that demands perfection. You should be with someone like Marcus Chen, someone who can give you normal. Someone who can make you laugh instead of making you work 60-hour weeks. Alicia's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. 3 years of longing, of denying, of convincing herself she'd imagined the electricity between them. And he'd felt it too. All along, he'd felt it too. You don't get to make that decision for me. Alicia, no. She moved closer, emboldened by anger and revelation. You don't get to push me away for my own good. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Dazed, they stood inches apart, the air between them charged with 3 years of unspoken want. Will's eyes dropped to her lips, and she watched him wage an internal war, control versus desire, duty versus need. I'm your boss, he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. You're a man who's terrified of feeling something real. I'm a man who's terrified of ruining you. Maybe I'm not as fragile as you think. His hand came up slowly, hesitantly, and cupped her face with a gentleness that made her eyes sting. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she realized he was trembling. If I start this, he whispered, I won't be able to stop. I won't be able to be professional or appropriate or any of the things I should be. I'll be possessive and demanding and completely irrational about men sending you flowers. Good. The word was barely out before his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything 3 years of denial could produce, desperate, consuming, perfect. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer as if proximity could solve the impossibility of never being close enough. She gripped his shirt, rising on her toes, matching his intensity with her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crept back in. This is insane, Will said, resting his forehead against hers. This is every HR violation imaginable. Then maybe we should stop. His arms tightened around her waist. I can't, God help me, I can't. A knock on the conference room door shattered the moment. They sprang apart as Sarah from accounting peeked in, oblivious to what she'd interrupted. Mr. Harrington, the Singapore team is holding on line 2. They say it's urgent. Tell them 5 minutes. His voice was steady, the CEO mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. Sarah nodded and disappeared. Alicia smoothed her blouse, her lips still tingling. Her entire world shifted off its axis. Will watched her with those storm-grey eyes, and she saw the moment duty reasserted itself. We need to be smart about this, he said quietly. The board, the media, the competitors, everyone will be watching. If we do this, we do it carefully. If? She raised an eyebrow. After that kiss, you think there's still an if? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. When are you seeing Chen? The jealousy in his tone was unmistakable, and something in Alicia thrilled at it. Tonight. Dinner at 7:30. His jaw clenched. Cancel it. No. Alicia, you said we need to be smart about this. That means not dramatically changing my behavior overnight. She moved to the door, then looked back. Besides, he sent me 3 dozen roses. The least I can do is tell him in person that I'm not available. Not available, Will repeated, testing the words. Because of me. Because of you. She left him there, returning to her desk where those white roses mocked her with their innocent beauty. Her phone buzzed, Marcus confirming their dinner reservation. Alicia stared at the flowers, at the card with its sweet sentiment, and felt the weight of what she was choosing. Marcus was safe, predictable, offered a future without complications. Will was dangerous, impossible, and everything she'd ever wanted. Her fingers hovered over her phone before she typed, looking forward to it. See you tonight. She told herself it was the smart thing to do. The careful thing. But when she glanced up and caught Will watching her through his office windows, the possessive heat in his gaze made her wonder if careful was even possible anymore. The rest of the day passed in a fog of stolen glances and deliberate professionalism. Will was in meetings until 6, and Alicia used the time to complete expense reports and respond to emails on autopilot, her mind replaying that kiss on an endless loop. At 6:45, she gathered her things to leave. Will emerged from his office, tie loosened, looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. "Have a good evening, Miss Monroe." The formality stung, even though she understood its necessity. "You too, Mr. Harrington." She was at the elevator when he called her name. "Not Miss Monroe, just Alicia." She turned, and he was there, close enough to touch but maintaining the professional distance the security cameras required. "Be careful tonight," he said quietly, "and if he makes you laugh 15 times, I'm going to lose my mind." Despite everything, she smiled. "I'll keep count." "Alicia." His hand twitched as if wanting to reach for her. "Come to my place after. Please. We need to talk about what happens next." "What's your address?" "You've had my address for 3 years. I've had your office address. You've never invited me to your home." Something vulnerable crossed his face. "1 Central Park West, Penthouse C. The doorman's name is James. I'll make sure he's expecting you." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Alicia stepped inside, holding his gaze until the doors closed between them. 2 hours later, she sat across from Marcus Chen in an intimate Italian restaurant in the West Village, candlelight dancing across his handsome features as he told her about his childhood in San Francisco. He was charming, attentive, and had indeed made her laugh 13 times by the time dessert arrived. "You seem distracted," Marcus observed, setting down his espresso. "Is everything okay?" "I'm sorry." Alicia set her napkin aside, knowing she needed to be honest. "Marcus, you're wonderful. Truly, but I can't. It's him, isn't it?" Marcus's smile was sad but understanding. "Your boss, the way you talk about him, even when you're complaining. I've known for a while. I'm so sorry." "Don't be." He reached across and squeezed her hand briefly. "We can't help who we fall for, but Alicia, be careful. Men like William Harrington, they're used to controlling everything. Make sure you don't lose yourself trying to fit into his world." The words stayed with her as she took a cab to Central Park West, as she gave her name to James the doorman, as she rode the private elevator to the penthouse. They echoed in her mind as she knocked on the door marked C and waited, her heart in her throat. Will opened the door in dark jeans and a white Oxford with rolled sleeves, more casual than she'd ever seen him. His eyes scanned her face, reading what happened. "You told him." "I told him." He pulled her inside, and this time when he kissed her there were no interruptions, no witnesses, no reasons to stop. This time the kiss went on until they were both breathless and wanting and finally honest about what they'd been denying for 3 years. "Stay," Will whispered against her lips. "Stay tonight. Let me show you what you mean to me." And Alicia, who'd spent 3 years being invisible, finally let herself be seen. The next 3 weeks existed in a beautiful, terrifying limbo. At the office, they maintained meticulous professionalism, Mr. Harrington and Miss Monroe, CEO and assistant, nothing more. But in the stolen moments, late evenings in his penthouse, quiet Sunday mornings tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, dawn conversations over coffee, where he told her about the divorce that had shattered him 7 years ago. They were simply Will and Alicia, 2 people navigating something neither fully understood. They were exceptionally careful, no public displays, no obvious changes to their routine. but Alicia caught the way Sarah from accounting watched them with knowing eyes, how Harrison Webb's smirk seemed more pronounced during board meetings. Secrets, especially ones wrapped in desire and defiance, had a way of revealing themselves. The annual Harrington Industries Charity Gala arrived on a Friday evening in late October, when Manhattan had shed its summer heat for the crisp promise of autumn. The event was legendary, 500 of New York's elite gathering at the plaza to raise millions for childhood education initiatives. As Will's assistant, Alicia had coordinated every detail from the ice sculptures to the silent auction items. What she hadn't anticipated was the dress. It arrived at her apartment that afternoon via private courier, nestled in tissue paper inside a box from Valentino. Emerald silk that would cling to every curve, with a neckline that walked the line between elegant and devastating. The note was simple, written in Will's precise handwriting. "You've been invisible for too long. Tonight, I want the world to see what I see. W." Standing in front of her mirror 2 hours later, hair swept into a sophisticated updo that exposed her neck, the dress transforming her from competent assistant into something approaching royalty, Alicia barely recognized herself. The woman looking back was confident, powerful, desired. She was terrified. Her phone buzzed. The car Will had sent was waiting. During the drive to the plaza, she practiced breathing exercises and reminded herself that tonight was just another event. She'd attended dozens of corporate functions. This was no different, except it was completely different. The grand ballroom was a vision of white and gold, 200 tables draped in silk, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across Manhattan's most powerful. Alicia entered through the service entrance as planned, intending to do final checks before guests arrived. Alicia! She turned to find Marcus Chen in an impeccable tuxedo, holding a champagne flute and looking at her with open admiration. "I almost didn't recognize you. You look absolutely stunning." "Marcus, I didn't know Sterling was attending tonight. Last-minute invitation from the planning committee." His smile was warm but held a hint of sadness. "How are you? How are things with—" "Complicated," she admitted. "But good. Really good. I'm glad." He seemed sincere. "You deserve happiness, even if it's with him. Thank you for understanding." "Alicia, before the evening gets crazy, I wanted to tell you, I've accepted a position in London. I leave in 2 weeks." "London? But you love New York." "I love a lot of things about New York." His meaning was clear, but sometimes distance is necessary for healing. Besides, it's an incredible opportunity, managing director of Sterling's European operations. She hugged him impulsively. "You're going to be amazing." "I hope so." He pulled back, glancing over her shoulder. "And I hope you know what you're doing, because if looks could kill, I'd be dead right now." Alicia turned to find Will standing at the ballroom entrance in a midnight blue tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a dream. But it was his expression that stole her breath. Raw hunger mixed with something darker, more possessive, as he took in the sight of her in Marcus's arms. Their eyes locked across 50 feet of polished marble, and the rest of the room ceased to exist. "I should go," Marcus murmured. "But Alicia, be careful. A man who looks at a woman like that, he'll either worship her or destroy her, sometimes both." He disappeared into the growing crowd as Will closed the distance between them with predatory grace. "You wore it," he said quietly, his voice rough. "Did you doubt I would?" "I doubted my sanity in sending it." His eyes traced the neckline, the way the silk emphasized her waist. "Every man in this room is going to want you tonight. And I'm going to have to stand there and pretend I don't want to commit murder. Will, Miss Monroe." Harrison Webb materialized beside them with impeccable timing. "Don't you look extraordinary? Will, you should give your assistant a raise. She's clearly been hiding her light under a bushel. Miss Monroe's compensation is appropriate for her contributions, Will said evenly, but Alicia felt the tension radiating from him. Indeed. Webb's smile was knife-sharp. I saw her with Marcus Chen earlier. They seem quite cozy. Poaching employees, is he? Mr. Chen and I are acquaintances, Alicia interjected smoothly. Nothing more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the auction tables. She walked away before Will could respond, feeling both sets of eyes on her back. The next 2 hours were a blur of managing caterers, resolving seating disputes, and ensuring the program ran flawlessly. She was good at her job, exceptional even, and took pride in the seamless execution, but she was always aware of Will. Watching him work the room, charm donors, command attention without effort, and watching the women who gravitated toward him, stunning, sophisticated women who belonged in his world in ways she wasn't sure she did. Dinner was a multi-course affair showcasing the plaza's culinary excellence. Alicia sat at a side table with junior staff, far from the main dais, where Will held court with board members and major donors. She told herself it was appropriate, professional, exactly how it should be. She told herself the ache in her chest was ridiculous. After dinner, when the dancing began, she escaped to the terrace for air. The October night was cool, the city light stretching to infinity. She breathed deeply, trying to reconcile the woman in the emerald dress with the girl from Brooklyn who'd worked 3 jobs to pay for college. "You're hiding!" She didn't turn at Will's voice. "I'm taking a moment. I've been watching you all night." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Do you know what torture it's been, seeing you in that dress, watching other men look at you, and not being able to touch you? We agreed to be careful." To hell with careful. He turned her to face him, his hands on her waist, his eyes blazing. "Dance with me." "Will, everyone will see." "I don't care." His voice was fierce. "I'm tired of pretending you don't matter. I'm tired of watching you sit at a side table when you should be beside me. I'm tired of denying what we both know is true, which is that I'm completely, irrationally, irreversibly in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and perfect. Alicia's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "Say something," Will whispered. "Please." "I love you too." The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. "I've loved you for so long, I can't remember when it started, but Will, this is your reputation, your company. Nothing means anything without you." He pulled her closer, swaying to the music drifting from inside. "Let them talk. Let them speculate. I'm done hiding how I feel." They danced on the terrace, 43 floors above the city, and for one perfect moment, nothing else mattered. No board members, no gossip, no complications. Just 2 people finally admitting the truth. The moment shattered when a camera flash erupted from the ballroom doors. Jennifer Walsh from the New York Post stood there with her photographer, both wearing expressions of predatory glee. "Mr. Harrington, care to comment on your relationship with your assistant?" Will's jaw tightened, but he didn't release Alicia. "No comment. Is it true you've been secretly dating for months? That you gave her that dress? That you've been using company resources to—" "That's enough." Will's voice could have cut steel. "This is a private event." "With media invited," Jennifer countered, "and this is definitely newsworthy." CEO of Harrington Industries romantically involved with his employee? The board will love this. She disappeared back inside, already typing on her phone. Within seconds, Alicia knew the story would be everywhere. "We need to do damage control," she said, trying to step away, but Will held firm. "No, we need to decide right now, together, how we're handling this. Will, your reputation is less important than you." He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I meant what I said. I'm done hiding, but only if you're with me, only if you're willing to weather whatever comes next." Alicia looked at this man who'd been her boss, her obsession, her secret, who was now asking her to step into the light with him, to claim what they were publicly, regardless of cost. "The board will try to force you out," she said quietly. "Harrison Webb will use this as ammunition. The media will tear us apart. Everyone will say I slept my way to the top, that I'm using you, that—" "Let them." Will's thumb traced her lower lip. "Let them say whatever they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. What if it's not enough? Then we'll face it together." His forehead touched hers. "But Alicia, I need to know. Are you in this? Really in this? Because once we walk back through those doors, there's no going back to invisible." She thought about 3 years of hiding, of denying herself, of watching from the shadows. She thought about the emerald dress, the penthouse mornings, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. She thought about love, real, complicated, terrifying love, and what she was willing to risk for it. "I'm in," she whispered. "All the way in." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, with 500 people just beyond the glass and cameras probably recording every second. When they finally broke apart, his smile was fierce and free. "Then let's give them something to talk about." They walked back into the ballroom hand in hand, and the room erupted. The photo went viral before midnight. Alicia Monroe, mysterious executive assistant, in a couture gown, dancing with William Harrington III on the plaza's terrace, their body language leaving absolutely nothing to interpretation. By morning, every major business publication had picked up the story. By Monday, the board had called an emergency meeting. Alicia spent the weekend at Will's penthouse, ignoring the 37 messages on her phone from reporters seeking comment. They ordered takeout, unplugged the television, and existed in a bubble that couldn't last but felt necessary for survival. Sunday night, wrapped in his arms on the leather sofa, watching the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows, reality finally intruded. "The board meeting is at 8, Will said quietly. "They're going to demand explanations." "Oh, what will you tell them?" "The truth, that we're in a relationship, that it developed organically, that you're still exceptionally qualified for your position, and any suggestion otherwise is insulting. They'll see it as a liability. They'll see it as weakness." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Harrison's been looking for an opportunity to challenge my leadership for 2 years. He thinks I'm too young, too impulsive, that I don't respect tradition enough. This gives him ammunition." "Then maybe we should—" "No." Will turned her to face him, his expression fierce. "We're not backing down. We're not apologizing. What we have isn't wrong, and I refuse to treat it like it is." But at 2:37 in the morning, when Alicia couldn't sleep, she crept to Will's study and opened her laptop. The articles were brutal. CEO's secret romance raises ethics questions. Harrington Industries shares drop 3% amid controversy. From boardroom to bedroom, the assistant who climbed her way up. The last one included speculation about her qualifications, insinuations about favors exchanged, and several unflattering theories about how she'd secured her position. They painted her as ambitious, calculating, predatory, everything she wasn't. "They're wrong!" She jumped at Will's voice. He stood in the doorway in boxer shorts and nothing else, looking exhausted and heartbreakingly beautiful. "They're not entirely wrong," Alicia said quietly. "I did benefit from being close to you. Opportunities, exposure, experiences I wouldn't have had otherwise. You earned every single one of those things." He came to kneel beside her chair. "Your intelligence, your work ethic, your ability to anticipate problems before they occur, that's all you. I didn't give you those qualities. I just gave you a platform to showcase them." The board won't see it that way. Then the board can go to hell. But uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Alicia, I need to tell you something about why I push so hard, why I built walls, why I've been so terrified of this. She waited, giving him space to gather courage. My ex-wife, Catherine, we married young, 24 and 22, both from old New York families, the kind of match everyone expected. I thought I loved her. I thought we were building something real. His jaw tightened. Then I discovered she'd been having an affair with my business partner. For 2 years, while I was working 80-hour weeks to build Harrington Industries, she was sleeping with the man I trusted most. Will, it destroyed me, he continued, his voice raw. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that I'd been so blind, that I'd missed every sign, every lie. When the divorce was finalized, I made a promise. No more vulnerability. No more trusting anyone with anything that mattered. And then you walked into my office for your interview. Alicia's breath caught. You wore a navy suit that was slightly too big, Will said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. You were so nervous you knocked over your water glass. But when I asked you why you wanted the position, you looked me in the eye and said, because I'm exceptional at making impossible things happen, and I suspect you need someone exceptional. And I knew right then you were going to be dangerous. Dangerous how? Because you made me want to try again, want to believe, want to trust that not everyone would betray me. He took her hands. These 3 years, watching you prove yourself every single day, seeing your integrity and dedication, you rebuilt something in me I thought was permanently broken. That's why I fought this. Not because you weren't good enough, but because losing you would destroy me in ways Catherine never could. Tears streamed down Alicia's face. You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. If the board forces me out, if this scandal damages the company irreparably, if the pressure becomes too much, then we'll handle it. She kissed him softly. Together. That's what love means, Will. Not running when things get hard. They held each other as dawn broke over Manhattan. 2 people bracing for a battle neither was sure they could win. The emergency board meeting was exactly as brutal as anticipated. 12 stern faces around the mahogany table, with Harrison Webb leading the charge. This is unprecedented, Webb declared, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. A CEO involved with his direct report? The ethical implications alone could expose us to lawsuits. Not to mention the optics. The optics, Will interrupted coolly, are that 2 consenting adults developed feelings for each other. Last I checked, that's not illegal. It's inappropriate, Eleanor Chen, the HR director, said firmly. We have policies about workplace relationships requiring disclosure. You violated those policies. Because the relationship was private until Friday night, Will countered. I'm disclosing it now. Alicia and I are in a committed relationship. She remains exceptionally qualified for her position. If the board has concerns about perceived favoritism, I'm happy to have an independent review of her performance metrics. That's not enough. Webb leaned forward. Will, I'm saying this as someone who respects you. This looks bad. Really bad. The shareholders are nervous, the press is circling, and frankly, your judgment is being questioned. The best course of action is to end the relationship, issue a joint statement about maintaining professionalism, and move forward separately. No. The single word hung in the air like a grenade. No. Webb's eyebrows rose. You're willing to risk everything, your reputation, this company, your family's legacy, for an assistant. I'm willing to risk everything for the woman I love, Will corrected. And yes, she happens to be my assistant, but she's also the most capable person I've ever worked with, the kindest person I've ever known, and the only person who's ever made me believe in partnership over control. So no, Harrison. I'm not ending this. If the board wants to force me out, go ahead, but I won't compromise on this." Silence fell like snow. Finally, Margaret Saunders, the oldest board member, a woman who'd known Will since childhood, spoke. "Will, I understand what you're feeling, but loving someone doesn't mean destroying your life for them. Sometimes the most loving thing is letting go." "With respect, Margaret, I disagree. Sometimes the most loving thing is fighting. For them, for us, for the possibility that something beautiful can survive in an ugly world." "This is ridiculous," Webb snapped. "We can't let personal feelings dictate business decisions." "Then maybe," Alicia's voice cut through from the doorway, where she'd been waiting as requested, "you should hear from me." All eyes turned to her. She'd worn a simple black Armani suit, professional, unassailable, and her chin was high despite the tremor in her hands. "Miss Monroe," Eleanor began, "this isn't appropriate. I know, nothing about this situation is appropriate, but I'm going to say it anyway." Alicia moved to stand beside Will, not touching, but united. "I've worked at Harrington Industries for 3 years. I've never been late, never missed a deadline, never done anything except exceed expectations. I have a master's degree from Columbia, 5 years of executive experience, and impeccable references from my previous positions. I earned this job. I earned every responsibility Will, Mr. Harrington, has entrusted to me." "But you're sleeping with him," Webb said bluntly. "That changes things." "Does it? Because last I checked, my gender and relationship status don't impact my ability to coordinate schedules, manage crises, or contribute to this company's success. Would we be having this meeting if I were a man?" "That's not the point. That's exactly the point." Alicia's voice strengthened. "You're not concerned about ethics or company policies. You're concerned that a black woman from Brooklyn somehow infiltrated your world, and now you're looking for any excuse to discredit her." The room went deathly silent. "That's a serious accusation," Margaret said quietly. "It's an honest observation." Alicia looked at each board member in turn. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for fair treatment. Review my performance. Compare it to any other executive assistant in this industry. If I'm not meeting standards, fire me. But don't fire me because I had the audacity to fall in love with someone I work with." "The board doesn't have the authority to fire you," Will added. "Only I do, and that's not happening." Webb's face flushed. "Then perhaps we should be discussing your position instead, Will." "A CEO who lets personal entanglements cloud his judgment, my judgment," Will's voice dropped to something dangerous, "built this company's value by 423% in 7 years. My judgment negotiated the Singapore deal, the Tokyo expansion, and the partnership with Sterling that you all praised 6 months ago. My judgment is sound. What you're really saying is that you don't like that I made a choice that prioritizes my happiness over your comfort." "We're trying to protect you," Margaret's voice cracked. "Both of you, can't you see that? The scrutiny, the pressure, the constant questions, it will eat you alive. Is this relationship really worth sacrificing everything?" Will looked at Alicia, and something passed between them. A question, an answer, a promise. "Yes," they said simultaneously. The board meeting ended with no resolution, only the promise of further discussion. But something had shifted. By putting everything on the line, Will's career, Alicia's reputation, the company's stability, they'd forced a reckoning that went beyond policy violations and optics. The question was no longer whether their relationship was appropriate. The question was what they were willing to sacrifice to keep it. That night, Alicia didn't go to Will's penthouse. She went home to her Brooklyn apartment, needing space to think without the intoxication of his presence. Her phone rang at 9:15, her mother calling from Atlanta. "Baby, I saw the news." "Mama, is he good to you? Does he treat you right?" Alicia's throat tightened. "Yes, he's He's everything. Then the rest doesn't matter. Her mother's voice was firm. You think I didn't face gossip when I opened my restaurant? When I, a black woman with no culinary degree, dared to compete with fancy establishments? They tried to tear me down too. But I had something to prove. Not to them, but to myself. You understand? I understand. Good. Then don't you dare shrink because others are uncomfortable with your success. You earned your place at that table, Alicia Monroe, and if that man makes you happy, you hold on to that with both hands. After they hung up, Alicia made a decision. She opened her laptop and began to write. Not a resignation letter, but a statement. Her truth, in her own words, without apology or defense. The next morning, she published it on LinkedIn. My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm 28 years old, a Columbia Business School graduate, and the executive assistant to William Harrington III. I'm also a black woman from Brooklyn who grew up watching my mother build a business from nothing, who paid for college by working 3 jobs, who believes in excellence and integrity above everything else. Recent media coverage has reduced my 3 years of work at Harrington Industries to a scandalous romance. It's painted me as ambitious, in the worst sense, as if ambition in women, particularly women of color, is inherently suspicious. It suggested I achieve my position through means other than merit. Here are the facts. I applied for my position through normal channels. I was hired based on my qualifications. I've exceeded every performance metric. I've contributed to major deals, crisis management, and company growth. I've done all of this while maintaining professionalism, discretion, and unwavering dedication to my work. I've also fallen in love with my boss. This is messy, complicated, and yes, violates certain professional boundaries. But it's also real, honest, and between 2 people who tried very hard not to let it happen. I'm writing this not to justify my choices, but to challenge the narrative. Women should not have to choose between career success and personal happiness. We should not have to prove ourselves twice as hard just to be seen as half as competent. And we certainly should not have to apologize for loving someone. To those questioning my qualifications, review my work. The evidence speaks for itself. To those questioning Mr. Harrington's judgment, consider that perhaps falling in love doesn't diminish a person's professional capabilities. To those who think this is a scandal, I respectfully disagree. This is just life, imperfect, complicated, and beautifully human. I'm not resigning. I'm not hiding. I'm standing in my truth and challenging others to do the same. The post went viral within hours. The comment section became a battlefield, some praising her courage, others doubling down on criticism. But something shifted in the narrative. Other women shared their own stories of workplace romances, of fighting prejudice, of refusing to shrink. Alicia was in a coffee shop in Brooklyn when Will called. You wrote that without telling me. I did. It's brave, possibly reckless, definitely magnificent. She heard the smile in his voice. The board is having collective heart failure. Good. Alicia, his voice softened. Come to the office. There's something I need to show you. An hour later, she stood in his office, that familiar space that had been the backdrop to 3 years of longing, now transformed by honesty. Will handed her his phone, where a different statement was displayed. His own, posted to the Harrington Industries website. To our shareholders, board members, and stakeholders, leadership requires many qualities: vision, determination, and the courage to make difficult decisions. But perhaps the most important quality is integrity, the willingness to stand by your values even when they're tested. Recent events have brought my personal life into public scrutiny. Rather than hide behind corporate statements or legal language, I'm going to be direct. I'm in love with Alicia Monroe, my executive assistant. This relationship developed gradually over 3 years, despite both of us fighting it for professional reasons. It's real, it's serious, and it's permanent. I understand the concerns this raises about workplace dynamics and ethical boundaries. I take those concerns seriously. Moving forward, Alicia will transition to a new role, Vice President of Strategic Operations, reporting directly to the board rather than to me. This position recognizes her exceptional capabilities while addressing any conflicts of interest. Some will say this is favoritism. I disagree. This is recognition of talent that's been evident since day one. Alicia Monroe has earned this promotion through 3 years of exemplary performance. The only favor I'm doing is finally acknowledging her contributions publicly instead of keeping her invisible. If the board finds my leadership unacceptable under these terms, I understand. I've loved building Harrington Industries, but I refuse to build anything on a foundation of denial and dishonesty. Sometimes the most important thing you can fight for isn't a company or a deal. It's the person who makes everything else worthwhile. I hope you'll continue to support Harrington Industries. But more importantly, I hope you'll recognize that great companies are built by whole humans, not perfect robots. We all have personal lives, relationships, and choices that make us vulnerable. The question is whether we're brave enough to own them. Respectfully, William Harrington III, CEO, Harrington Industries. Alicia stared at the screen, her vision blurring. Vice President of Strategic Operations? The position doesn't exist yet, Will admitted. I'm creating it for you. You'll have your own team, your own budget, your own projects. You'll report quarterly to the board, which removes any perception that I have inappropriate influence over your career progression. Will, I don't need... You deserve it. He turned her to face him. You've been managing strategic operations for 3 years, coordinating between departments, identifying inefficiencies, solving problems before they escalate. I'm just giving you the title and compensation that match your contributions. The board will never approve this. They already did. Emergency vote this morning, 11-1. Let me guess. Harrison was the one. Harrison resigned an hour ago, took a position with Sterling. Apparently, Marcus Chen, before he left for London, made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Will's smile was sharp. Marcus may have mentioned how replacing me would be a mistake Sterling would capitalize on. Interesting man, your former suitor. Alicia's head was spinning. This is too much, too fast. Or maybe it's exactly the right amount at exactly the right time. Will pulled her close. I'm done with hiding, Alicia. Done with pretending you're not essential to everything I do. This isn't charity or favoritism. This is me finally being honest about your value. I don't want people thinking. People will think what they think. He pressed his forehead to hers. But you and I know the truth. And everyone who works with you will see within weeks that this promotion was earned 100 times over. She should protest more, should worry about optics and appearances, and what the remaining board members would say. But standing there in his arms, in the office where she'd spent 3 years being invisible, finally being seen, really seen, she couldn't find the energy to care about anything except this moment. I love you, she whispered. Even when you're being overbearingly generous and impossible to argue with. I love you too. His kiss was gentle, reverent, especially when you're being stubborn and brilliant and making me work for it. A knock on the door interrupted them. Sarah from accounting peeked in, trying to hide a smile. Sorry to interrupt, but there are reporters downstairs asking for statements. Should I tell security to... Send them up, Will said. Alicia's eyes widened, but he squeezed her hand. We're not hiding anymore, remember? 10 minutes later, they stood side by side in the conference room, facing 5 reporters with cameras and notebooks. Alicia wore her new title like armor, Vice President of Strategic Operations. Will wore his conviction like a crown. Mr. Harrington, Jennifer Walsh from the Post began. Some are calling this promotion suspicious timing. How do you respond? By pointing to Ms. Monroe's performance reviews, project outcomes, and measurable contributions to company growth. All documented, all exceeding standards, all predating our relationship becoming public. Ms. Monroe, another reporter interjected, do you feel you've earned this position, or is it compensation for the media attention? Alicia met the woman's eyes steadily. I've earned every opportunity I've ever been given, including this one. If anyone doubts that, I invite them to review my work. Results speak louder than speculation. Are you planning to marry? Someone called out. Will's hand found hers beneath the table. When and if we make that decision, you'll be informed through appropriate channels. But yes, I intend to spend my life with this woman, in whatever capacity she'll have me. The questions continued for 20 more minutes, but the tone had shifted. What started as interrogation transformed into something approaching respect, or at least acknowledgement that they weren't backing down. That evening, they returned to Will's penthouse, exhausted but lighter. The worst had happened. Public scrutiny, professional challenges, personal attacks, and they'd survived, not unscathed, but together. No more secrets, Will said, pulling her onto the terrace where they danced at the gala 4 weeks ago. No more pretending, no more invisible. No more invisible, Alicia agreed. He kissed her beneath the Manhattan stars, and it tasted like freedom. 3 months later, Alicia stood in a different conference room, presenting her first major initiative as VP of Strategic Operations, a mentorship program pairing junior employees with senior executives, designed to break down hierarchies and create pathways for talent regardless of background. The board approved it unanimously. 6 months later, the media had moved on to other scandals, and Harrington Industries stock had recovered to record highs. 8 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Will proposed on the same terrace where they'd stopped hiding. The ring was platinum and emerald, the color of the dress that had changed everything. Marry me, he said simply, not because it's expected or appropriate or solves any problems. Marry me because I can't imagine a single day without you, because you're my partner in everything that matters. Because 3 years ago, you walked into my office and rebuilt something in me I thought was broken forever. Alicia didn't hesitate. Yes. Their wedding 6 months later was small. Immediate family, close friends, and Marcus Chen, who flew in from London to give a toast about the importance of letting go when love requires it. On their honeymoon in Tuscany, wrapped in luxury sheets in a villa overlooking vineyards, Will traced the curve of her spine and whispered, "Do you ever regret it? The scrutiny, the battle, everything we went through?" Alicia rolled to face him, her smile radiant. "Never. Not for a second. Even when you were just an employee." She kissed him slowly, deeply. "I was never just an employee. I was always the woman who was going to change your life. It just took you 3 years to notice." He laughed, pulling her closer. "Best 3 years of denial I've ever experienced, and the best is yet to come." She was right. 5 years later, Alicia Monroe Harrington stood in the same grand ballroom at the Plaza, now as Chief Operating Officer of Harrington Industries, addressing the annual charity gala. Her speech was about breaking barriers and creating opportunities, about refusing to be invisible, about the importance of fighting for what matters. Will watched from the front table, their 3-year-old daughter asleep against his shoulder, and marveled at how far they'd come. The woman who'd once sat at a side table now commanded the room with grace and power. The company that had almost torn them apart now thrived under their combined leadership. When the speech ended to thunderous applause, Alicia descended the dais and came directly to them. Her family, her choice, her truth. "How was it?" she whispered, kissing their daughter's forehead. Perfect, Will said, like you. Not perfect, just real. And that, they both knew, was infinitely better. The flowers that had once symbolized another man's interest now filled their home weekly. White roses that Will ordered every Monday, a ritual honoring the day everything changed. But they meant something different now. Not pursuit, but partnership. Not possession, but choice. Alicia had been invisible for 3 years, then visible for 1 turbulent year, and now she simply was, whole, powerful, and exactly where she belonged, not just an employee, never just an employee, the woman who'd rebuilt a broken man and claimed her rightful place, one courageous decision at a time.